it's excellent to have a recording because it will have a transcript that you can see. It's funny because every word I say, it's showing me that, and so I can't speak when I'm doing that. So I moved it. But yeah, this will be nice because you can revisit this, Forrest and Allison, and I will make sure to send you kind of a link to this, which you will have, I think, because you have access to this meeting, unless maybe you don't because you're guests, so maybe you don't. So then in that case, I will send that to you for sure. And then you can, it's nice because you can look through the transcript and maybe take things from there that you said, keep that in your notes, or, sometimes, with your many bezels of wisdom that you will share with us, there's going to be some in there that you need to save. So, yeah, we're going to wait a couple more minutes to get started on this.
Sounds good.
Oh, well, I do have a Dallas Wooten.
Oh, look at that.
Very nice.
I don't know if either of you know Dallas, but he graduated. He received his MFA in ceramics. Hannah, have you met Dallas, or maybe you came right after he left? So maybe that was like, I don't know, 2020 or something like this. Maybe is when he graduated. Do you guys know him, Forrest or Allison?
Yeah,
I've met him and I know of him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he started grad school the year after I graduated. So I didn't really have any overlap with him, but I've met him.
Oh, awesome.
And on social media recently, it seems like he's running a clay center and a gallery and kind of organizing artists to come through his way and do things there. So
that's
involved
awesome.
in the field on multiple levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'm going to see if I wonder if we can do that thing of pinning you. Or what we can do is, Hannah, I think that you can diminish your screen or not show us. I'm saying so that's right, Hannah. And then we have, what I'm seeing is just Forrest and Allison, and then maybe you guys see me up there too. Anyway, I think that's okay. We'll be having our conversation, and we could just go ahead and begin. So what we have here is Avenues, Alumni Artist Talks, and the focus is on ceramics. Here we are, it's October 4th of 2023. We're at the School of Art and Design with Forrest Sinkoff Guard and Allison Fawcett. I'm so happy to have you both here, and I have a series of questions to ask. I also will begin. I also want to thank our student guests who are in our meeting so far, and some more will be trickling in over time. Our student guests, you feel free to type any questions and things or raise your hand. And we'll see if we can manage that. I'll make sure to address those things inside the chat. And I wanted to start by reading your bio information. Allison Fawcett was born and raised in Medina. Is that how you say it? It's Medina.
Yep, Medina, near Cleveland.
Where she discovered a passion for art through her family and community. She began with an interest in drawing and painting before finding a love for clay. In the spring of 2017, Allison received a BFA in ceramics from Ohio University and moved to Zanesville, Ohio, where she was a resident artist at the Pioneer School of Zanesville, the PSZ Clay Center. Allison lives in Dayton, Ohio, where she teaches middle school and high school ceramics at Stivers School for the Arts, as well as community classes at Rosewood Arts Center. So awesome. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Forrest Gard earned his BFA from Ohio University, completed post-baccalaureate studies at the University of Florida, and received the MFA from Louisiana State University. He has shown his ceramic art and interactive installations in exhibitions across the US, Europe, and South Korea. Forrest taught ceramics in Italy as part of the University of Georgia's Cortona program, and more recently at the University of North Georgia. He was awarded the NCECA International Residency at ASP in Wrocław, Poland, as well as residencies at Red Lodge Clay Center and Mill Hill Community Arts Center. Currently, Foster is a resident artist and ceramics instructor at Harvard University in Cambridge, Mass. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's so excellent to have you both here. We started these Alumni Artist Talks, and we do them virtually. We started this kind of over the pandemic, and we decided to just keep going with this series because having it virtual, allows us to kind of reach out to different people wherever you guys are. So I'm so happy that you're here with us. So I have different questions. I'll just throw these things out there and we talk about whatever and go in whatever order we want, right? So here we are. My first question is, what degree did you receive? And we've just covered that. Ceramics. It's all about the Studio Art Ceramics program this evening. And then, so tell us something, such a general question to get us started. Tell us some things you learned at Ohio University and at the School of Art and Design that contributed to your success.
Do you want to jump in, Allison?
Sure, I can go first. So I'd say one of the big things was kind of learning how to manage time as an artist. I thought that was really important, realizing that you really have to dedicate a large chunk of your time in the studio to get a good output of work. Learning how different ways to display your work, talk about your work, how to kind of express your own thoughts about your work, which can be difficult, as well as applying for different shows and opportunities. I like that you kind of get some real world experience, learning how to, do applications, writing resumes, as well as kind of getting feedback from critiques, like how to navigate critiques, and then kind of edit your work from there. Also kind of learning how to deal with failure. It's kind of inevitable, especially as a studio potter. So just learning how to deal with that and kind of move on, how to, refine your work from there. So just a few things.
Right. Yeah,
And
what do you want to say about that, Forrest?
I'm going to second just about everything on that list, but I definitely learned how, and kind of in my own words, I learned how to be a student, and I learned how to be an artist. And in high school, I wasn't always the best student, so I kind of had a chance to relearn how to study and how much time it takes to do certain things. And like Allison was saying too, how to talk about your work and how to critique not only and defend my own work, but how to ask questions to my studio mates. And some of that happened through being around when grad students were talking about their work and just listening and observing. There's a lot happening in the building and in the program and in the School of Art and Design. So just learning how to be present and be around and open your eyes and open your ears and you'll take in a lot.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely. So, and that is I really appreciate the way you're saying that. This thing about, learning how to actually be present in the building, in the classroom, in your life, really, in these activities, and to sort of, take in these things, because that's really like School of Art and Design has a lot of that stuff happening. And, you could kind of burrow in and not, take things in. I mean, you can't take it all in, right? But I like what you're saying about the value of that. And also, like you both were saying, this thing about the time that it takes really to make something special. It takes time. And maybe after many years, we might be able to dash something off, or every once in a while, right? We can pull something quick off, and it's a miraculous. But then you're always trying to like find that again, which takes a long time. So
yeah, I remember one of my teachers, it was probably Brad Schwiger, but he's like, I remember him saying that art is every day. It's from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and it's every choice and decision that gets made in those hours. And so it's not always going to be a time that you're like at your table making your work. It's going to be other times too. Yeah, it takes a lot.
Absolutely.
that's really awesome, because really that there is that also that idea of like, that's sometimes we're not in the studio, like kind of what you're saying, but we are maybe thinking about it, or we're just to kind of look at things through that lens of like, okay, this is my life's work. So when I wake up in the morning, like you're saying, what Brad said, then already I'm kind of engaged with some part of that life's work, which culminates in a way in these studio experiences or objects, etc. Yeah, so that's really fascinating what you're talking about, this idea of presence. So what about this? Yeah, this is a good one. Like, what advice would you give to someone wishing to pursue this degree or this concentration here?
So I would say one of the biggest things is definitely take advantage of all the amazing resources that you have while you're in school. You don't really maybe realize it until you graduate and you're like, oh, I wish I would have, gotten more use out of, this, or I'd say especially the kilns are awesome at OU. Definitely take advantage of the kilns. After graduation, if you don't end up, in a residency, you might not have access to all that equipment. And then I'd also say, like, make sure you're attending like artist lectures and workshops and shows. It's really important to, make those connections with other artists and just be, taking in other art. As well as just make as much work as possible, and kind of like take risks within your work, experiment.
Absolutely. That's so great, Allison.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the things I'd kind of thought about, I'd said previously, but work hard. And then to second what Allison said, be all in, go to everything, like go to those artist talks, go to those workshops. If there's something happening outside of class, show up, be there, and try to like see what's happening. I feel like there were a lot of things that I learned, like how to mix clay and how to just do things properly, like in the technical things. And then that helped me in closer to graduation. And shortly after I graduated, some of the grad students and even my professors would ask for help. And some of that help was paid. So it's just like there's a lot of opportunities within the building. The more that you know, the more that you can do. So kind of just really take advantage of all of those things.
Yeah,
And
I love
also as a student, like other things to take advantage of that you might not be thinking of. are like use any benefits that come to you as a student. Like if you need a new computer, you probably get some kind of discount student rate. So there's like all those things on campus outside of even the art building that you should take advantage of. And as soon as you graduate, those discounts and those opportunities will start to go away. Even like travel grants and things like that are specific to students. Those will be helpful and beneficial.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well. I thought of travel grants, being able to go to NCECA, I applied for the PERF grant. That was a huge deal, being able to get that. So yeah, definitely take advantage of all those opportunities.
That's so great. And I'm just looking at my list of students who are like in the room right now, and I'm not really seeing some of those seniors who are they are working on that PERF grant right now. And because now we had that as part of a class that they're learning how to do that. And I just can't agree with both of you more. I mean, I'm so glad that you're saying that thing about kind of going to see all of this stuff and go to the demonstrations, the visiting artists. I mean, I was having a conversation with some students about that recently, and it was interesting because I was saying, well, sometimes people aren't really coming to some of those events, and how come you guys don't come? And they were saying, well, we're really, really busy. And so that's really true. Like our lives are so busy. So, I mean, what advice do you have to say about that? Like, I don't know, maybe I'm saying like prioritize. I don't really know how did you guys manage to be so successful as students when you were here with all of the distractions that we have at that time of our life?
That's a great question.
I stumped. I think I don't think
it's not easy. I definitely spent less times like with my friends and out, and I just kind of I just tried to spend as much time at the studio as I could. So I had to make sacrifices in other places, and a lot of that came with like some of my friends who weren't in the same program as me. I just saw them less, or even family. Sometimes I didn't see my family as often as I would have liked. But kind of knowing that like, okay, this is an opportunity. Like my job is to be a student and to learn and as much as I can right now. And some of those decisions are hard to make. And then trying to also, since your job is a student, that means like minimize the actual work that you're doing outside of school, which is not always financially feasible. So maybe you have to like ask your parents for money or apply to those grants or take out a loan, which is not maybe the best financial advice, but like there are like sacrifices that you have to make.
Yeah, I'd say, you definitely have to, prioritize what's most important to you, maybe like in the moment. If you're, obviously there's a lot of opportunities, we were talking about the artist talks, shows. You can't obviously maybe make them to all of them, but, decide what's most important to you and, make the effort to go when you can, even if you maybe don't want to or don't think you have the time, just because it'll be important like down the road. Never know like what some of those small things can lead to.
Right. And also that thing, if we do engage and we attend, then we're usually rewarded. If we go to these visiting artist things, for instance, because that's fascinating. But also, like I liked what you were saying, Forrest, about not working too much outside of your student job. I really like the way you're talking about that, because it's true. Like, especially, I would say this very much, especially because of ceramics and the nature of that studio, which is like so awesome. And like, it's not just everywhere that you could do that. it's like that at our school with printmaking a lot too, and probably some other areas. But I really like the idea of like really using that ceramic studio and getting in there and really spending the time. And I could see when I look at both of your work, I've been spending time looking on your websites and all of that. And it's like, oh, wow. I could see the incredible craftsmanship and then also this crazy stuff, Forrest, where it looks like you were making a whole bunch of stuff and then people were breaking it for fun.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Well,
in my bio when I referred to like the interactive art. That was definitely a lot of interactive installations. And since people were playing games with objects that can break, I'm trying to make high volumes of those in multiples.
right. So that is really like sort of showing that expertise that you said, you were, the seeds of that were here, where you were really learning about how to do these sort of technical different things. How does all this stuff work? And then that has led you into further, being able to keep doing this awesome stuff.
Mhm.
Just since I'm mentioning these websites, I just love those tableware and the things, Allison, that you the beautiful painted, like just the color of that and the botanicals and the way that you like. See, I'm not a ceramicist, so but I see that. I guess what you do is you cut out those sort of like leaf and flower shapes and put them on there. There's some, maybe you score the thing a little bit, get it on there. I have no idea, and then they're just part of the pot in that way. It just looks absolutely gorgeous. So, just that said, anybody here who has not looked up those websites, I just invite you to do that. They're very different approaches that you both have to how you have used ceramics, and but sort of unified by this kind of incredible ability, craftsmanship, professional kind of presentation, etc. So some of these things are a little bit redundant in a sense. What specific skill sets helped you to prepare for your current practice? Maybe I kind of said that, career or occupation. But actually, let me go to this. I don't know what your memory is like, but tell us about your experience with foundations classes. Do you remember anything about that? Anything that you want to say about foundations?
I personally remember foundation classes being really challenging and hard. I was a young student. I was shy. I did not know how to confidently talk about work. I took things very literal, but I learned like so many different things. The design elements and principles for like apply to anything that we're talking about as far as like visual language goes. And some of those things took a long time, but before they really circled back around until I started to teach some of those classes as an educator. And then I was like started to really kind of think about that impact. But yeah, I think I was wish I had more confidence then. And I just remember them being challenging, and I was intimidated a lot of times in those classes. So it took me a little bit to like find my own voice and kind of get past that intimidation.
I would say I had kind of a similar experience. I've always been a very kind of reserved, quiet person. So yeah, learning how to go through critiques and talk about my work and do performance art and all that was definitely challenging for me. But I'd say it was a rewarding experience. I actually kind of decided to go into ceramics after my foundation class. I had Brian Dieterle as my instructor for that. We did a ceramics project, so I got to, see the ceramics studio, and that kind of really pushed me to apply into the ceramics program. So yeah, it was a good experience, but yeah, it was definitely a challenge. Um, but I think they just really prepare you for, different ways of thinking about your work. When you do get into your studio concentration, kind of allow you to explore, some different mediums. Again, how to navigate critiques and discussions of your work. You also, just get the chance to get familiar with people that you will, be spending a lot of time with in the studios. And then getting to, people outside of your concentration, getting to know them as well.
Right. There's that whole thing about your sort of cohort and in foundations, everybody's sort of thrown in together, and then you don't realize like, oh, these are the people I'm going to be around, for the next 4 years. And it's so exciting how those relationships shift and change. They, as we do, because we're changing so much at that time of our life. Actually, we always are. But that period of those 4 years, it's like very intense, changing and growing and kind of emerging from different places, and then everybody's doing that alongside of us, and it can be incredibly enriching, to have those relationships. And I so appreciate what you shared with us about each of you being sort of like shy and reserved, and then you're in these classes like trying to make art, and that's kind of a revealing type of a activity to do. So that has its challenge, and I do think that is rather that's not an uncommon experience. For me as an educator, it's really interesting to hear that, though. Like, I tend to be more of a chatty type, and so it's a little bit easy to make friends in those spaces or things like that, right? So it's interesting for me to hear about, oh yeah, sometimes that's hard to just put yourself out there. Um, and the challenge of those classes. Also this idea where suddenly you're doing drawings, you're in drawing class and it's 3 hours long, and it's something to adjust to. Allison, you just mentioned the very awesome Brian Dieterle. Are there any other courses or mentors that stand out to either of you? Anybody you want to talk about that was kind of, that said something helpful or not, or anything like that?
Loads. Yeah, I feel like almost every professor I had was like really important in some way or another. I mentioned Brad Schwiger earlier, but Alex Hibbett was a professor that I had that left a really big impact on my work. And she taught this class that was kind of like an intermediate level ceramics class that was just like informally known as concepts. And I remember that class and that like time as being a student of really learning how to think conceptually about art, and that left like a gigantic impact on my work. Also technical things. Before Brian Dieterle was hired, I had the previous tech, Robert Boomer Moore, who's a full professor at West Virginia University. So that's who I learned how to make molds from, and glaze calculation, which are still skills that I use to this day. So like mold making's been the main way that I've made my work for the last 15 years. So those classes stood out. And then outside of ceramics, I remember taking a Photoshop class, and that did a lot for me, learning how to use Photoshop, which allows me to edit photographs and put together portfolios. And something I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about advice for students, one of those would be to just like get organized and have a good file data system, and like be able to access your images and your CV and your writings pretty regularly, and always kind of know where that information's at, have it backed up. I keep things on the cloud. So if I'm traveling, I'm getting off subject here, sorry, but keep some things on the cloud. So if I'm traveling, I can access those things. If I'm in a different state and you just go through a clay studio and you get asked to do a talk, you don't want to have to tell them like, oh, I'm sorry, it's on a thumb drive back home. Like you should be able to log into the cloud and just download that and just be able to like give an on the fly artist talk, or access those images, or email them to somebody if they're want your work to apply to a show with or something. Anyways, yeah, so some technical ceramics classes, some specific people definitely stood out. And then also some classes outside of ceramics really helped me learning how to photograph my work too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's true, like Alex Hibbett, like what an incredible conceptual artist. So I'm so glad that you had the chance to work with her. What were you thinking about, Allison?
So I had, a wonderful experience with all the ceramics faculty. I didn't get to work with Alex too much. I had her just my senior year. But I was, close with Tom and Brad. They were definitely, a great help to me. I'm still in contact with both of them. But outside of ceramics, I also took 2 painting classes, as well as a printmaking course. And I really enjoyed both of those. I took both traditional and experimental painting, and kind of growing up, painting and drawing, just kind of as a hobby. It was, a good experience to, to learn more about that, kind of experiment with it more. And I've also kind of found relationships, between both painting and printmaking and my own work, such as a lot of my design work. So both of those were kind of influential classes for me.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, like the thing that you had said inside of your bio about like being, interested in painting and drawing when you were younger, and then you discovered clay, and then you could sort of see that on your work too. And I was thinking about that right now in terms of the printmaking, because of also like, well, the relief sculpture basically that you're making. Makes me think about printmaking and the way that we look at images, with some things that are, some things are on top of other things. There's like these layers of information happening that bring layers of context and further, engagement really with that form. It's really great. So what about this? Tell us about something current in your project, something in your practice, something in your current position. What does your day-to-day look like? You want to start with Forrest on that?
I'm doing a residency program right now at Harvard. It's on paper, it looks like I'm a professor at Harvard University. It is a community studio. So it's like, it'd be like taking it's open to the community, it's leisure classes. So part of my residency, I make work, and I'm also an instructor. The reality is I'm also living in the second most expensive city in the country. So I am working for the first time a job that's not related to the arts and that I didn't need a BFA to do. So I'm kind of juggling my time between the artist residency, making work, teaching, and another part-time job where I work for a florist, which I do get to use design skills a little bit. So a couple times a week I go to the studio, and a couple times a week I go to my other job, and I teach 2 days a week. And that's like what my current position looks like. My own work that I'm working on, you mentioned, we kind of talked about earlier, some of those installations and the interactive work. That's work that I made for over a decade, but kind of have stalled on a little bit with COVID and with different things. It just didn't make sense to make community work. And then I kind of steered into this new direction where I was making functional objects that referenced some of the sculptures that I use in those installations. So I'm kind of revisiting some of the interactive work. I'm working on ideas right now and generating, figuring out exactly what I want to make during the residency. But a lot of the work explores this like carryover from child's play to adult play. So I'm kind of questioning why as children we feel that we're allowed to play, and why as adults we feel all this pressure from society and we feel like we're not allowed to play. So a lot of the work and objects that I make um, reference things in our adult life that are not fun, like brooms for sweeping and doing laundry and making breakfast and kind of like domestic things. So I'm highlighting specific objects that I'm figuring out how to make games based off those objects.
Awesome. And do you live in Cambridge, Mass?
I just live in Boston, Mass, and the Harvard studio is actually in Alston, which is right across the river from Cambridge. So we're close to the Harvard University's like football stadium, and we're like a 15-minute walk from Harvard Square. But we are like right across the river and technically in a different town.
Right, in Alston. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And Allison, what did you want to say?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of in transition mode, kind of transitioning into a full-time studio potter. I know in my bio it had my teaching, so I've been teaching the past 4 years at Stivers School for the Arts, which is a middle school and high school that students apply into in different areas of fine arts. So I'm no longer teaching there. I'm just, yeah, kind of moving on. I have kind of my studio set up at home now. So yeah, I'm just ready to hopefully make work full time. But I also teach ceramics classes, adult ceramics classes at Rosewood Art Center, which is in Kettering, Ohio, a community arts center. So I really enjoy teaching adult classes there. So I just do that 1 day a week, and then the rest of my week is dedicated to my studio time at home, making work. I'm in a couple galleries right now, have some shows coming up. So yeah, the rest of my work week is dedicated to making work at home.
That's really awesome that you're just really just digging into that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's, that's scary, and sometimes that's sort of stressful. But the work is so beautiful. I'm sure you're doing well with that.
Thank you.
It looks really good. Plus, I was seeing that you've got the jewelry, which looks really, just really, really well made and like just tastefully crafted, and the beautiful tableware. So that's great that you could get to kind of produce more of that and interact with galleries and make more, action happening that way. That's really exciting. And then, like, it probably feels good to be teaching the adults doing some of that, like, community stuff, because then, you're getting out of your studio. I guess I'm saying that to both of you. You're getting out there. You have a few, times where each week where you're spending time with these other people, kind of serving.
Definitely. And I think of my teaching as like an extension of my studio practice in many ways. And it kind of ebbs and flows. Like the periods where I'm making less work, I'm usually more focused and dedicated on my teaching. And that takes a little bit of work, like planning what you're going to do and outlines and preparing demos and finishing stuff. And like, it's just so process oriented. It does take a lot of time, and also observing how other people teach and going to workshops, and all of that is I think as part of my practice as well, even though it's not like physically making my own work. But yeah, it's
like
really
the education part of it really for both of you has been, definitely a way that you've been able to continue, have access to studios and different people and activities. So that's a kind of a through line with both of you.
Yeah. And we've talked about community teaching. I've taught a number of community classes. The first teaching I ever did was in Athens, Ohio at the Dairy Barn. So just like reaching out to your local, whatever is available, and just putting yourself in the community. And that you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think all those like community arts centers are just so great because you know, it's separate from like that academic situation. It's like a slightly different feeling, or a very different feeling, and different emphasis, and interesting opportunities can come from that. Um, so I mean, this is kind of interesting. Like, how did you choose your particular specialty? How has your specialty changed? And I don't know, by specialty, what do we mean? Do I mean ceramics, or do I mean even more special? I don't really know. How you could interpret that however you would like to. I mean, I was thinking about how Allison said, like, well, at first it was painting and drawing, but then I saw the ceramic studio and it pulled me to that. But maybe we're talking about something even more specific, like why, Allison, like why the pots as opposed to, you know, sculpture or whatever. You don't have to address that question, but I mean, I guess
Yeah.
that's where we're going.
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually, you know, starting as kind of drawing and painting, and how that's kind of transitioned into my ceramics. Yeah, I've always admired like my mom's like china cabinet, and you know, all the work, and I just like the kind of utilitarian, you know, but beautiful nature of ceramics and pottery. So I wanted to, you know, find a way to use pottery kind of as a functional canvas. Um, so yeah, my work it's similar to, you know, the work I had for my thesis show. You know, in terms of being functional porcelain pottery that's kind of heavily decorated. Um, but it's definitely evolved since then. You know, learned new techniques since then. You know, I had been just using like sgraffito um, for my previous work. So now I rely on like slip trailing, kind of layering things, mishima. So a lot of different techniques. I'm always kind of adding to that, you know, inventory of knowledge and trying to add new things.
Oh, that's awesome. What about you, Forrest? Like, how do you think you ended up with this? Where and also, like, how is it shifting for you? How is it changing?
Yeah. Well, I got into ceramics in high school, and probably just passion. I mean, it was one of the first things I really excelled at. I got good feedback on. I remember my high school ceramics teacher, Amy Douglas, organized and had people like apply to a student show, and then my piece was at the governor's mansion in Columbus, Ohio, and like I don't know, it's just like I just got acceptance, and then but I didn't realize you could do ceramics as a career until I went to OU, and I kind of stumbled into the ceramics program. I was really lucky. My stepmom teaches in the School of Music, so I had a tuition waiver to go to Ohio University, which helped a tremendous amount. And I kind of my first 2 years at OU were I was an undecided student, and but I kept taking like art history classes, and in the back of my mind, I was like, I need to take some ceramics classes. And when I took that first ceramics class, it just rocked my world. I mean, I walked into a nationally ranked ceramics program and at a very good art school, and kind of learned right away like you can do a lot of different things within the field. You can focus on different types of work, different types of firing, just different types of glazes. Um, there's just like so many different directions that you could go, and I found that really intriguing. And I was also there was just so much to learn, so I just kept learning and putting myself out there. As far as my work now goes, I'd say it's evolved a lot, just kind of seeing how far you can take an idea and letting that idea like develop and evolve. And more recently, I've been making the work that I make is hard to make a living off of when you're doing interactive work, and you're when you don't always have something to sell. So I've kind of had to get pretty creative with that. So like some of the work that I'm doing now is um, functional objects that reference my sculptural objects. And one reason I'm doing that is so I can have a product to put for sale. and in addition to some of the other works, or I can have a product that's like sellable at a different price point than a large scale sculpture is. So just kind of, it's evolved, like a lot of the work's evolved conceptually, but also thinking about how to make a living and different ways to sell work. And yeah.
I saw, Forrest, that you were the recipient of a $25,000 grant to create a public work. And so that's like another way, right? That some things, congratulations, that's awesome to have that opportunity. But and I can see that's another realm of where some funding can happen, right? Is like through like these large works. Of course, it was probably so much work for you to produce the thing that it's like, yeah, that's why they gave you 25,000, because it's like, it's a big work. You want to say a few things about that?
Yeah, well, grants in general, I've been seeking out since I was a student, some of those travel grants to go to NCECA. When I lived in Columbus, Ohio for a couple years, I applied to grants to the Greater Columbus Arts Council, and those are like about $1,000 each. And I got them a couple different times. They helped me buy equipment. I was able to travel to Rochester, New York to do some research at the National Institute of Play, which is related to my work. And then more recently, the grant that you're talking about was through an artist residency program I did in Mill Hill, and in Macon. They had this the Knight Foundation, which used to publish newspapers. They have large art grants, and they have a couple cities that they funnel their grants through, and Macon was one of those cities. And so in the 3 years that I was living in Macon, they gave away like more than $1 million worth of grants, and the grants all went to artists and makers. And so it takes time to like write those applications and to come up with a plan, and to kind of like to get people to trust you that you're going to deliver on what you say you're going to do. But that specific grant allowed me to do a community art project. And for a year, I had people from the community come and make clay flowers. I had over 400 people come and make flowers, anywhere from kids like 2-year-olds to I had a retirement home. The mayor of the city came, and people from public council. And so it's just kind of like I just reached a lot of people in the community, and we fired these flowers, and then we permanently installed them on a sculpture in front of the community center. It's like a big 60 square foot sculpture. And if you go to Macon today or next year or in 5 years, you can see it. It'll be outside of the community center. But yeah, the grant, we wrote into the grant like how much the project was going to cost. And we also wrote into the grant administrative fees and money to pay ourselves as artists. So I had a residency that provided housing and studio space, but it was coming to an end. So the grant allowed me to stay at that residency longer and receive like a monthly stipend.
That's very awesome. It sounds like a really beautiful project. I just love that, with the way you talked about that with the 2-year-old and the senior center and the whole thing. It's like really paints the picture of that. Was everything? What was the color?
Earthenware. It's not earthenware. It's a brown clay body, and it's a local clay body from Georgia, and I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but it looks kind of like a brown clay body.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Really amazing.
Lizella is the clay that it's called.
Oh. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is where I'm looking at my list of questions. We're talking a little bit about these residencies. What both of you have engaged with residencies in different ways. You want to say a little bit about that? Anything that really stands out with a residency experience? I mean, I'll say that too. That it's what I've seen as as an artist and educator. As I'm more like a painter, and so I could go on some short residencies, and that could be perfectly wonderful for me. You guys end up on these residencies that are like months or a year. So yeah, that's kind of fascinating. that you kind of really get engaged with a studio and stay there for a while in some cases. Allison, what do you want to say about some of your residency activity? And
Yeah, so my residency was maybe a little different than others. It was at a very newly formed clay center in Zanesville, Ohio, which was in an old school building. So I was actually among like the first group of residents to come through. So I actually had a hand in helping, like get the gallery set up, painted, kind of setting up studio spaces, helping to install the kilns. So yeah, I lived and worked kind of in trade for my studio space there. I was there for 7 months, I believe. So I was there with 3 other MFA grads from OU also, that we kind of went together, and I ended up staying, the longest out of everybody. So I had a period where I was just there making work. I ended up have a solo show at the end of my time there. So that was a good experience to have, my first solo show, after my thesis show.
yeah, that's really, really exciting. We have a question from Libby in the chat of how did you find the residencies, and how do you find these teaching opportunities, etc. What do you guys want to say about that?
So I had actually found out this residency from another grad student, Kelsey Duncan, who had a connection with the Clay Center. So I was invited, to do this residency. I had applied to a lot of other residencies, after this one. I was hoping to maybe do another one. None of them quite worked out. But yeah, I did go through, the application process. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's great because that's what we do, right? We apply to different residencies that we're attracted to. Sometimes we don't get accepted into them. That is definitely a big part of that process. The same with awards and grants of all kinds, right, you guys?
My rejection pile is way bigger than my acceptance pile.
That's right. And so, we learn how to kind of understand that, and that there are so many wonderful, talented people out there, and we are always going to keep trying to find those opportunities in different ways. And there's different websites that we could look for residencies, such as like Res Artis and Residencies Unlimited. Those are like huge places. I'm sort of now saying to Libby this kind of information since she asked that, but those are compendiums, right? So that's fascinating. What do you want to say about that, Forrest? About you've had like quite a lot of residency activity. Also, it's interesting because Forrest is older than Allison, and you graduated about 8 years previous. So this is where you're further along in some ways, in your opportunities and the development of your career. What do you want to say about that?
Every residency is different. I've had short-term ones where I've paid to be a resident. I've had long-term ones where I've been paid, and I've had ones where you're expected to work at the gallery or as a studio manager, and I've had ones where you're only expected to make work. So like every single residency is different, and but they are like really good times to just dedicate yourself to making new work. As far as finding the residencies and opportunities, one way that I found a lot of opportunities when I was a student was I looked at other people's resumes. And so I did a lot of, I call it resume stalking. That word's probably not the best word to use, but I looked at every resume that I could get my hands on. I think an easy way to do that for ceramic artists, there's a couple websites. Everyone's got a website these days, but artaccess.org is a really great website that shows like hundreds, maybe more than 1,000 different artists now. And you can easily click on like one of their names and the resume comes up. And then I start to look at like, well, first I'm looking at artists that I admire, that I respect, I like their work. And so I'm trying to like see like, okay, well, where did they go? What shows did they do? What where, did they go to grad school at a certain place? Do they do a certain residency? And then I'll go to that website and I'll look it up and I'll see if they're still around or if they have an application. So just a lot of like looking at where my professors went, where the other grad students went, where the people who graduated a couple years before me, and then reaching out to a national and international kind of search. And then there's also websites like Mateo mentioned earlier. One of them that I use to find a lot of job opportunities is the College Arts Association, CAA. And I also use Ceramics Monthly a lot. They have online call for entries. Every October issue is their residency issue. So they have like specific issues that are dedicated to like putting this information out there, and other online resources. But yeah, residencies are fun. I would highly recommend doing a residency.
Here's a question for Allison. Let's see here. What made you want to pursue a middle school, high school teaching career? This is from Sophia, who is a painting senior, amazing senior. What are some of the challenges of the job, and what would you recommend to college students interested in pursuing that path? What a great question, Sophia.
Yeah, thank you. So teaching was never my ultimate goal. This position kind of landed in my lap. I was set up at an art fair when I first moved to Dayton. So I was selling my work, and somebody from the school approached me. They're looking for a ceramics adjunct. So for this position, I didn't need, licensure, teaching experience. So I just really kind of got thrown into it. So they're, more looking for artists with, or teachers with, professional, experience as an artist. So yeah, it was never my ultimate, goal to be a teacher, but it was a really good experience still to, be able to teach at multiple different levels now. It's definitely a challenge, especially middle school. It was hard to, put so much energy in, teaching kids that, some of them don't want to be there, and then come home and try to focus on your own work is definitely difficult. So yeah, I can't really speak to, teaching experience outside of that really, because I don't have, teaching license but.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And we now have a master's in arts education, so you could come back.
Yeah.
You could come back, Allison, and just spend a year with us and do that if you want to go. But I think what you're going to do instead is to really amp up that studio life and your galleries, and that's what you're going to be focusing on for the next little while. And we're having gratitude from our students. You answered their questions, and they're very, very appreciative of that.
Okay.
It's so crazy that we only have like 5 minutes left in this meeting, because it seems to have sort of flown by for me. It's so wonderful to be with you both and to hear about your experiences. And I also, I'm really happy to hear questions from our group who is with us this evening. Some more of those questions, you could type them in the chat, or you can speak up if you'd like. But let me see what else here we want to talk about through these questions. Oh, this is kind of an interesting one. As an OU alumni, did you capitalize on the OU network? And if so, how? And then I have like another part of this, which is that, we have this new thing called the Bobcat Network. I don't know if you guys know about that at all, but it's something that you can Google and kind of get involved with, because, we've created all this stuff at the university that's more, we're sort of trying to keep everybody in touch with each other in different ways, or opportunities are listed on that Bobcat Network. And also people might reach out to you because, of different, usually really interesting reasons. So, that's something to be aware of. But what would you say about that? Like, the OU network. Do you feel like that's how you have moved forward, or did you capitalize on that network in some ways? And how did you do that?
I think kind of like I mentioned earlier, like looking at my professors and other grad students and people who graduated before me and just seeing where they went. And that really gave me an idea on things to apply to. And then I like to travel a lot and go on road trips and go to other things. Like every time I went somewhere, I would try to visit a clay studio or meet an artist. And as I did continue my education, I used all the schools that I'm connected to. I kind of used all their networks. So it's like I didn't know about the Bobcat network, or it probably wasn't. It seems newer, but I would definitely take advantage of that if you're a student now. And your networks and your alumni and the people that like see what they do and ask questions. And if you're traveling, reach out to them. And those are ways that I used the network.
Yeah, I really like you were saying this thing about looking at people's resumes. I mean, I did that so much where and then I would see a gallery, like I would see painters who I was like, oh, that work is great. I can relate to it. It's kind of like relates to mine. Where are they showing or whatever? Dig into that. And then you could look at that gallery itself and be like, would I fit in there? Yes, maybe I would. Are they accepting? This kind of thing. It's just very strategic, and it's just all in there, in that sort of soup of the same stuff that you're interested in and the people you like. Check out what is happening with them. It's really great advice.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, so I've definitely tried to stay in touch with ceramics faculty, and I've made it to NCECA most years, which is, awesome to see everybody, that stay in touch. But also you always meet new people that way, getting introduced through, people you already know, meeting other, new artists. Yeah.
Yeah, and NCECA is
NCECA, yes.
That's a national, what is it?
National Council on the Education for the Ceramic Arts. I've had to edit that so many times. And a part of my career too was at working for Ceramics Monthly, and yeah. But yeah, Allison's right. Like, go to NCECA. OU usually has an alumni party. OU has a booth, and every school does. So, like, hang out at the OU booth, and you'll meet other alums, and you'll find out about opportunities. If a group's going to dinner one night, like, see if you can tag along, or just tag along anyways, and put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's so great. Allison and Forrest, had you guys met before?
I actually remember Forrest coming to do an artist talk while I was an undergrad at OU.
Oh.
Yeah. We haven't had in-depth conversations, but we've been in the same room at the same time.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I guess you're like 8 years apart in the program. We're out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to say to us, Forrest, Allison? Anything else that you just felt like, oh, wait, he didn't ask me this thing, and I really wanted to tell people this?
I
had like notes on notes, but like, take care of your body. It's not just like hard to make work, but it's physically really hard. So like, exercise and stretch, and like, think about ergonomics. I think that's like something that's really important if you want like a long career in the arts, especially in ceramics. It's like a really physical field. So I think that's something that I think a lot about too, is like, can my body do this for my whole career? I want it to. So take care of it.
Definitely important.
Wow, that's just a really, really excellent, really great way to end, because it's just absolutely true. And the more we do that, kind of take care of ourselves, then we are able to sort of serve others in other ways and stand in the studio for a longer period of time. Yeah, the stretching and all of that, the yoga. Thank you so much for your time and your just sharing about your experiences. We appreciate it so much. And so I guess at this point, I will just say good night. And I will send you a copy of this, and we'll email each other. And thank you again, Allison Fawcett and Forrest Sinkoff Guard. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. That was fun.
Have a great evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Mateo, and it's a pleasure chatting with you, Allison. And I was
You as
also
well.
on the website earlier. Your work is looking fantastic. So
Thank
keep
you
it up.
so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Have a good night.
All right. Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.